The transmission cracked with static before a scream tore through the comms, raw and final. Alex Carter said, "Stay with me, goddammit, don't go dark." The stars outside the viewport blurred as alarms wailed. A final breath hissed over the channel, then silence swallowed everything. Fear knotted in the gut of every soul aboard. Evelyn Shaw said, "We lost him, Alex. He's gone." The red lights strobed across pale faces, and for a heartbeat, the universe felt like it had teeth. Beyond the glass, endless black pressed closer. They were already too far from Earth, and still the real mission had not yet revealed itself. The silence pressed heavy, thicker than the void beyond the hull. Alex Carter said, "He was still breathing. I heard it." Evelyn Shaw answered, "No one breathes in vacuum, Alex." Their words hung like ashes. Liam Hayes muttered, "Then what the hell did we just hear?" The crew exchanged glances, fear curdling into suspicion. The agency's voice broke in, clipped and cold. "Maintain course, do not deviate." Static hissed as the command cut off, leaving behind unease that felt more dangerous than the alarms. Space had always been merciless, but tonight it carried whispers of betrayal. The crew drifted in silence, hearts thudding louder than the engines. Shaw stared at her trembling hands, whispering, "I should have saved him." Carter snapped, "Don't blame yourself. The agency knew more than they told us." Hayes looked up sharply, fear mingled with anger. "Are you saying they set us up?" A long pause followed, the ship groaning as if echoing their doubt. The void outside felt alive, watching. Somewhere hidden behind lies, a truth waited sharp enough to cut through steel. The console crackled again, faint voices barely audible, distorted into whispers. Shaw said, "That's not static. Someone's talking." Carter leaned close, face pale. "From inside or outside?" Hayes shook his head, voice cracking. "Voices don't come from outside, not out here." The whispers grew louder, fragmented words clawing through the channel before vanishing. Silence returned, colder than before. Carter whispered, "We're not alone." Fear twisted inside them, sharper than any blade. The ship's lights dimmed for a breath, then surged back. Carter muttered, "Power surge." Shaw whispered, "Or sabotage." Hayes snapped, "Don't say that." Shadows crawled across steel walls, twisting with each flicker. The agency's voice cut through again. "Stay focused. You have no idea what's at risk." Then silence, abrupt and final. Carter slammed a fist into console. They knew. They always knew. Outside the viewport, the void glimmered strangely, as if watching with unseen eyes. The cockpit settled into a silence that felt heavier than gravity. Alex Carter pressed his palm to the viewport, his reflection cracked by red warning lights. He whispered, "I promised I wouldn't fail again." Evelyn Shaw turned, her voice soft. "You can't carry it all, Alex, not again." Liam Hayes shifted uncomfortably, glancing between them. He muttered, "What happened before? What are you not saying?" Carter's jaw clenched, guilt simmering like fire under skin. The agency's silence filled the air, a ghost that never answered. The stars outside seemed indifferent, watching without judgment as the cracks inside the crew widened. Carter closed his eyes, the scream replaying in his mind. He whispered, "Years ago, I lost my crew. Fire in orbit. No survivors but me." Shaw's breath caught. "They still sent you up here?" His nod was slow, bitter. Hayes shifted back in his seat, anger mixing with fear. "If the agency knew, why keep you in command?" Carter's voice cracked with rage. "Because I let them. I begged for redemption." The silence that followed was cruel, pressing like a blade. Shaw's hand brushed Carter's arm, but her eyes betrayed doubt. The pass was not a wound, it was still bleeding. The comms pinged, and a soft voice filled the cabin. It was Anna Carter, Alex's daughter, her recorded message delayed from Earth. She said, "Dad, don't forget to look at the stars for me." His eyes broke as the words pierced deeper than any order. Shaw turned away, unable to intrude on the intimacy of pain. Hayes whispered, "She doesn't know, does she?" Carter shook his head, tears threatening. "She thinks I'm coming home." The crew sat frozen, reminded that behind every order and every lie, lives waited in the quiet of earth, never knowing the cost of ambition. Shaw finally broke the silence. "Do you think they ever tell the families the truth?" Her voice carried exhaustion, a bitter edge. Carter answered, "They tell them what they need to hear." Hayes laughed nervously. "So we're just bodies for their secrets?" Shaw snapped, "Don't joke, Liam." The agency's clipped voice cut in suddenly. "Crew harmony must remain intact. Focus on mission parameters." Static followed, colder than any human voice. Carter whispered, "They're not saving us. They're controlling us." His words sank like iron, heavy and undeniable. For the first time they all believed it. Carter stared at the dark beyond the glass, whispering, "Out here you realize Earth doesn't need us. We're expendable." Shaw's voice wavered. "Then why keep going?" His eyes hardened. "Because my daughter will think I tried." Hayes leaned forward, eyes wide. "That's not enough to survive." The air thickened, their breaths shallow, tension coiling tighter. Outside, the stars flickered cold, unblinking, eternal. The agency's silence hung like a noose around their necks. For the first time, the crew knew the mission wasn't about science or exploration. It was about obedience, and maybe about sacrifice. The engines thrummed through the hull, but the silence between the crew cut sharper than steel. Alex Carter stared at the glowing console, every red light like a threat, and said, "The agency keeps us in the dark. Every order could kill us." Evelyn Shaw's hands tightened on her lap, her voice trembling but steady. "We can't turn on each other, Alex. That's how missions fail." Liam Hayes slammed his hand on the console, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the confined space. "Then what are we supposed to trust? Them? Or each other?" The alarms pulsed in rhythm, like a heartbeat of dread. Each face, pale and strained, reflected not only fear of space but fear of one another. In the flickering glow, trust no longer felt like strength. It felt like glass already cracking. Warning tones echoed as oxygen levels blinked erratically. Evelyn Shaw leaned closer, whispering, "We're losing air." Alex Carter bent over her shoulder, scanning numbers, face dark with certainty. "That's not random. It's sabotage or system rot, but not chance." Liam Hayes threw up his hands, eyes darting wildly. "Don't look at me like that. I didn't touch a damn thing." His voice cracked under the weight of suspicion. Shaw's voice cut sharp, "Paranoia will kill us faster than vacuum." Carter snapped back, voice iron. "Or paranoia is the only thing keeping us alive." The hum of the ship felt oppressive, pressing down on them like a living weight. Every second the oxygen ticked down was another nail hammered into their faith. Trust wasn't survival anymore, it was poison. The ship groaned with a low metallic shudder, a sound that crawled under the skin. Alex Carter whispered, "It's the hull. She's warning us." Evelyn Shaw shook her head, fingers brushing cold steel. "Ships don't warn, Alex. They just fail." Liam Hayes rubbed his temples, muttering, "We're hearing ghosts, things that aren't there." Carter spun on him, fury flickering in his eyes. "Voices, static, screams, call it what you want, but something's real." Shaw's breath hitched, her eyes glistening in the dim light. "Or maybe it's us breaking apart, not the ship." Hayes whispered low, but it cut deep. "If someone's lying, it won't stay hidden forever." His words hung heavy, binding them in suspicion. The corridors of steel no longer felt like protection. They felt like a coffin tightening its lid. The comms hissed alive, filling the cabin with the agency's voice, clipped and cold. "Mission integrity is priority. Do not question parameters." Alex Carter snarled, face darkened by shadows. "Integrity? You hide truth then demand obedience?" Silence swallowed the room as the transmission cut, leaving a void more violent than words. Liam Hayes whispered, eyes darting at unseen corners. "They heard us. They're always listening." Evelyn Shaw's hands trembled against her knees, her voice bitter. "Then we're not crew. We're prisoners with delusions of command. Carter's gaze turned to steel, voice a whisper that chilled the air. No, we're not prisoners, we're pawns. The void beyond the glass felt alive, reflecting their fracture back at them. The agency's silence became another enemy, lurking and suffocating. The air turned sharp, visible mist curling from each exhale. Evelyn Shaw whispered, voice shaking, temperature drop. That's not an error. Someone's cutting us down. Liam Hayes hugged himself, teeth chattering. Why? Who would do that? Alex Carter stood still as a statue, eyes shadowed, voice low with menace. Because someone on board isn't who they say they are. The words fell like ice through their veins. Hayes recoiled, his voice breaking. You think it's me? Carter's eyes locked on him, calm yet merciless. I think it's one of us, and we'll find out soon. The lights flickered, shadows clawing across faces, distorting fear into something sharper. Suspicion no longer hovered unspoken. It stalked them openly, a predator in the cabin's suffocating glow. The oxygen alarms silenced suddenly, leaving only the thrum of engines. Alex Carter stared at the console, voice hard. Someone cut the system, then fixed it. Evelyn Shaw whispered, fear trembling. That means it wasn't failure. It was intent. Liam Hayes backed against the wall, eyes wide. You think it's me because I'm the easy target. Carter stepped closer, shadows slicing his features. I don't think. I know one of us is lying. Shaw tried to intervene, voice sharp. Stop this before it destroys us. But suspicion hung thicker than oxygen, turning every breath into accusation. The ship's central database flickered alive, screens bathing the cabin in cold light. Shaw leaned forward, eyes narrowing. These logs? They're edited. Carter's heart hammered. By who? Hayes stammered. I don't even know how to access them. The words rang hollow. A corrupted file opened on screen, mission directives redacted in thick black bars. Carter's throat burned as he whispered, the agency never told us the truth. Shaw added, voice raw, we're not explorers, we're bait. The cabin felt smaller, colder, as realization sank into them all. The mission itself was a lie, one big enough to kill for. Shaw's voice broke as she pointed at the data. They sent us here knowing it was suicide. Carter's fists clenched, veins bulging. They used us. Hayes whispered, maybe it's worse. Maybe one of us knew. The words twisted the air into something poisonous. Shaw's eyes darted to Hayes, then Carter, suspicion cutting deep. Carter growled, if someone's a spy for the agency, I'll find out. Hayes shouted, voice cracking, you already decided it's me. Shaw's hand trembled as she reached for her side console, torn between fear and desperation. The crew no longer looked like allies. They looked like suspects. The agency's voice broke through the comms, sterile and merciless. Crew, your survival is secondary. Data delivery is paramount. Carter's voice erupted. So we're expendable. Just pawns for your secrets. Shaw whispered, they don't even hide it anymore. Hayes pressed his palms to his ears as if the voice itself could kill him. We're not supposed to come back, are we? The line cut to static, final, and cruel. The three stared at one another, realization sinking in. The mission wasn't survival. It was sacrifice. Betrayal was no longer theory. It was fact carved into every breath of recycled air. The lights dimmed, plunging the cabin into near darkness. A single red strip light flickered overhead. Carter's voice dropped, cold and sharp. The agency wants one of us to deliver that data. They don't care who survives. Shaw's eyes filled with horror. Then they put a traitor among us. Hayes shouted, voice breaking. It's not me. Carter's gaze didn't waver. One of us has blood on their hands already. Silence settled, thick with fear. Shaw whispered, if we don't find the truth now, none of us make it back. The void outside felt closer than ever, pressing against the glass like it wanted in. The warning alarms blared louder than ever, and the entire ship seemed to tremble beneath them. Carter slammed his fist against the console, his face twisted in rage. This is it. They knew this would happen. All of it was planned. Evelyn Shaw stood across the room, eyes wide with disbelief. "Alex, stop!" she shouted, but her voice was barely audible over the clanging chaos. "We can still make it out of here." Hayes backed into the corner, his hands raised in surrender. "I'm not the one who sabotaged the ship. You can't just accuse me." The air was thick with anger, fear, and desperation. Carter's eyes were wild, sweat dripping down his forehead. He took a step closer to Hayes, finger pointing. "One of us did this, and it wasn't me. It wasn't Shaw. So who the hell else could it be?" The truth was almost too much to bear, but it had finally arrived. They were no longer playing a game. They were fighting for their lives. The air seemed to stop moving, the only sound the heavy breathing of the crew. Carter's hand hovered over the control panel, his mind racing. The agency didn't just want data. They wanted us to suffer. Shaw's voice cracked. "Alex, it doesn't matter. We don't have time for this." Hayes took a step forward, fear in his eyes. "You think I did it? I'm not the one who screwed us." Carter slowly turned toward him, his voice cold and final. "One of us did, and it wasn't an accident. You're too calm, Hayes. Too perfect." Hayes' eyes widened, a flash of guilt crossing his face. "What the hell are you talking about?" The tension in the cabin became unbearable. Outside, the void pressed in like an endless nightmare. Their oxygen levels were dangerously low, and survival was slipping away with every passing moment. They had crossed the point of no return. The silence in the cockpit was deafening as they all stared at each other, the weight of suspicion hanging thick in the air. Shaw shook her head, her voice desperate. "We're running out of time. We need to focus on the mission." Carter turned to her, his voice low and dangerous. "You don't get it, Evelyn. The mission was the trap. We're just pawns in their game." Hayes' voice cracked. "I never asked for any of this. I didn't want to be here." Carter stepped closer, his tone hardening. "Then why are you still here? Why did you stay if you knew this was going to happen?" Hayes staggered back, as if struck by the force of the accusation. Shaw's face twisted in confusion and fear. "Stop, we're all in this together." But Carter's voice cut through her plea. "No, one of us is already dead, and it wasn't an accident." The room felt colder, as if space itself had come alive to claim them. The ship shook violently, as another warning flashed across the screens. The walls trembled under the pressure of unseen forces, and the alarms blared in a chaotic crescendo. Carter moved to the window, his eyes fixed on the cold black void outside. "We were never meant to survive this," he whispered. Shaw's voice trembled behind him. "What are you saying, Alex? We can still fix this." But Carter shook his head, his eyes hollow. "No, Evelyn, we were always meant to die here. The agency planned this from the start." Hayes moved toward the hatch, his voice barely above a whisper. "Then what the hell are we supposed to do now?" Carter turned slowly, his gaze burning into Hayes. We fight to the end. But we do it knowing that we were never meant to come back." Silence descended again, only broken by the hum of the failing engines. It was clear now, there was no escape. The final moments were nothing but a blur of chaos. The control panel sparked, sending a jolt through the ship, and the walls shook violently, as if the universe itself had come to swallow them whole. Carter's voice was low, barely audible above the cacophony of alarms. "We either face the truth now or die in this lie." Shaw looked at him, her eyes wide, tears welling up. "Alex, please." But Carter didn't waver. "There's nothing left, Evelyn. We've lost." Hayes screamed in frustration. "I didn't do it. It wasn't me." Carter's gaze softened for a brief moment, but his resolve remained. "I know, but it doesn't matter now. The truth will die with us." The air grew colder still, and the darkness outside seemed to close in. They were alone, and nothing was going to save them now. The cabin was quieter now, the alarms and static fading into the background. Carter's gaze was fixed on the cold window, his breath fogging up the glass. "We're too far gone," he muttered. Evelyn Shaw's voice trembled as she spoke. "I thought we could make it back." Carter shook his head, his voice resigned. "You can't come back from this. The agency will erase everything, and will disappear like dust in the stars." Shaw moved toward him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We fought, Alex. We survived longer than they ever thought we would." But Carter didn't respond. He just stared into the endless black beyond the glass. Liam Hayes stood apart, a silent figure in the shadows, his thoughts unreadable. The truth had been revealed, but it brought no closure, only an overwhelming weight of inevitability. Shaw took a deep breath, her hands shaking. "We can still make it. If we send the data back to Earth, maybe someone will listen." Carter turned sharply, his voice bitter. "It's too late for that. The truth will destroy anyone who dares to expose it." Shaw stepped back, her resolve faltering. "We can't just give up. After everything we've been through, we owe it to the world to fight." Carter closed his eyes for a moment, then spoke softly. "You still don't get it, do you? The world doesn't care about us. They only care about the data." Hayes finally spoke, his voice soft, almost pleading. "Then what do we do? Do we just wait to die here?" The silence that followed hung heavy. It wasn't just the mission that had been betrayed. It was the very idea of hope. The ship's lights flickered again, casting long, distorted shadows on the walls. Shaw's voice was almost a whisper. "I don't want to die here alone, in the dark." Carter's eyes hardened as he looked back at her. "We're already dead, Evelyn. We just don't know it yet." Hayes stood up, his posture rigid, his words laced with fear. "Then why are we still here? Why haven't we given up?" Carter took a deep breath, his shoulders sagging. "Because we have nothing left to lose." Shaw took a step forward, her voice desperate. "We can still send a distress signal. We can still fight back." Carter's expression softened for a brief moment, but then he turned away. Fighting back means nothing when the enemy is already inside. The quiet seemed to stretch forever, broken only by the hum of the ship. Carter's voice, low and tired, spoke again. "You can't outrun a system that's designed to consume you." Shaw wiped a tear from her cheek, her voice breaking. "But we still have a choice, Alex. We don't have to be part of their game." Hayes spoke up, his voice shaky, but determined. "Then let's make sure we die on our terms." Carter looked at him, then at Shaw. The fire that had once burned in him seemed to have dimmed, but there was still something buried deep, that refused to let go. "If we're going to die, we die knowing we did everything we could to survive." The crew stood in the cockpit, no longer just survivors, but rebels in the face of an impossible system. The final moments stretched in unbearable silence. Shaw's voice was steady now, almost calm. "We're doing this for ourselves, for our families, for the truth." Carter nodded, finally turning to face her. "It's too late to turn back." Hayes stood tall, his voice ringing out. "Then let's make sure they know who we were." The ship groaned again, the metal creaking as if the very vessel was aware of its impending fate. The comms crackled, the faintest of signals cutting through the static. Carter moved to the console, fingers trembling. "It's done. We've sent everything." The silence after the transmission was deafening, but in their hearts they knew. Whatever happened next, they had made their stand. The stars outside remained unchanged, but inside the ship, everything was different. The transmission cut off, leaving behind nothing but static. For a moment, there was only silence, the kind that gnawed at the edges of sanity. The stars beyond the viewport were unchanged, indifferent to their fate. Alex Carter, standing by the console, whispered, "It's over." The words seemed to echo, but they were hollow, swallowed by the abyss. Evelyn Shaw moved toward him, her face pale, eyes distant, filled with loss. "Did we even matter?" she asked softly, a question that hung in the air like a ghost. Liam Hayes stood apart, hands trembling, unable to find the words. They had all sacrificed so much, but in the end, It didn't matter. They had sent the truth to Earth, but at what cost? The cold void outside seemed to draw nearer, consuming everything. The future was lost in the stars, but the past, heavy with regret, remained. The silence pressed in on them, heavier than space itself. Evelyn Shaw broke it, her voice barely a whisper. I can't even remember what Earth looks like anymore. Alex Carter looked up, his voice rough with emotion. You'll remember when we get back. But there was no hope in his words. Liam Hayes shifted uncomfortably. There is no going back, he said, his voice trembling. Shaw turned toward him, eyes sharp. But there was no anger, just the resigned knowledge that Hayes was right. The Earth they knew was gone. And so were they. The crew had been turned into ghosts long before their physical bodies were lost in the cold expanse. As the ship groaned around them, they realized they had no legacy, just a hollow mission, a trail of lies leading into darkness. The ship began to shake again, a low rumble vibrating through the walls. Alex Carter turned to look out the viewport, staring at the stars once more. If we're going to die, we'd die out here, he said, his voice colder than the void. Evelyn Shaw didn't answer. She couldn't. The words had lost their meaning. Liam Hayes stepped forward, anger rising in his chest. We still have a choice. We can still make them hear us. But Carter's expression was like stone. It doesn't matter anymore. We're already forgotten. Shaw looked up at him, her voice soft but firm. Then let's make sure we're not forgotten. Let's go out with something. The weight of her words settled in the room. They had nothing left. But maybe, just maybe, they could leave a mark before they were gone. The hum of the ship had become a slow, suffocating pulse, the last beat before silence. Alex Carter stood in the middle of the cockpit, the weight of everything bearing down on him. We've come this far, he said, his voice steady. Let's make sure it matters. Evelyn Shaw nodded, her face a mask of resolve. We'll make it count, she whispered. But Liam Hayes remained uncertain, his eyes flicking between them. How do we even know it's enough? The question hung in the air, unanswered. Outside, the stars had not changed, and neither had the blackness of the void. But within the ship, a new sense of finality settled in. Whether they survived or not, their message would echo forever. The final transmission echoed through the comms, cutting off into static. The crew sat in silence, the weight of their actions hanging in the air. Alex Carter looked at his two companions, his voice a whisper. We did what we could. Shaw looked at him, tears welling in her eyes. But was it enough? The words carried a finality that was almost suffocating. Liam Hayes slowly sank to his knees, his body shaking. We're really alone now, aren't we? Carter didn't answer. He didn't need to. The stars outside were just dots in the vast expanse of nothingness. The ship, the mission, and their lives had all been swept into the silence of space. And in that silence they found themselves, no longer explorers, but casualties of a system that never cared. The final scene was one of peace, but peace earned through loss, betrayal, and truth.